So please know that we are recording it for reference. You can always see conversations we've had as part of the Forefront Forum series anytime that they might be helpful to you or your teams. And also, we really encourage folks to be as engaged as you feel comfortable being. So we'll have a poll in a second to help us with this dynamic agenda idea. And then if you ever have questions or ideas or thoughts, feel free either to come off mute or to type them directly into the chat. Again, whatever is most comfortable for you. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll. As I mentioned, the agenda that we had before didn't quite feel like it fit after everything that changed the end of last week. So I'm going to open this up. You should be seeing 2 questions on your screen. And these are anonymous. Feel free on the first one to choose the 2 topics that are most relevant to what brought you in today. I will say, I see a couple of folks hit other. So if you have an other topic, please type that into the chat so we can try to hit as many things as possible. Let's see, about most of us have voted. I'm going to give it another 15 seconds if you haven't gotten a chance to click the buttons. I'm a slow reader myself, so don't feel bad if you're still contemplating which option fits best for you. All right, go ahead. End that poll. Results with everybody. So it looks like we're going to start with chatting about hybrid teams, or I'm sorry, hybrid work models. And then, oh, do we have a tie? A tie for creating and communicating work plans. And vaccination requirements. I'm not surprised about that. We've gotten a lot of calls about that one. Engaging volunteers. And then, okay, great. I see, Jill, thank you for adding that detail on Hearing Forefront's plan. I actually do have the slides that Fabric, our new home, shared with us. So if folks are interested, we can take a look at those as well. And then our second question of where folks are mostly at work, it's still mostly at home. All right, good. That's super helpful as well. All right. So thanks everyone for participating. I've been using this a lot over the course of the pandemic in programs. I've realized that I've heard lots of folks talk about how even though we're apart, we've been kind of more human in this time than ever before, with having like kids and dogs and cats and, you know, all manner of things running around in the background of our lives that were part of our lives before the pandemic. We just didn't know about each other's personal situations. So I kind of appreciate that. And I hope that some of the things we'll talk about today offer the opportunity to still bring our whole selves into our work in maybe a different way than we did before the pandemic. So trying to hang on to some silver linings of what has been a very difficult year for probably all of us. I also want to mention, I'm actually in the office today for the first time in 14 months. It's the last time I was here. For those of you that might not know, Forefront actually moved from one office to another in March of last year. So the last time I saw this space, it was concrete and steel beams and there was no office. So it's very exciting to actually be here and see desks and chairs. And I'm currently in the phone booth, one of the phone booths. So it's a nice space where I can, with a closed door, and have my mask off so I don't have to hide my face from all of you. All right, so, one other funny thing that I wanted to share. When I dug my briefcase out this morning, it actually had a real live little cobweb on it because it had not moved in 14 months, and that kind of cracked me up. So I hope that others have less adventurous returns to work. All right, so let's dive in. The most interested topic we've got here is hybrid work models. I mentioned that I'm very happy to share what Forefront has put together for kind of our safety and operations work. We don't currently have any official policies on hybrid work. So I'll just share that kind of anecdotally, I've heard from some folks that are kind of putting into their HR processes guidelines that say we expect certain folks to be in the office at certain times, or there are a certain number of days the week supposed to be. And Gladys, I see your comment in the box. If this is not a program that's helpful, I'm sorry that there was a confusion in advertising, but we will not be talking about after school programs today. Sticking with the hybrid option. So some folks are putting it into policies and many folks are still in the planning process. So from there, I actually wanted to open it up to this group. Again, we really try to create this as holding space for what's working for you. Have you tried something that has not worked that you can share with others? Where are folks currently that clicked on that as a top issue? Where are you in your planning process?
I can start. In terms of the planning process, we kind of, my name is Maya, I'm from Syrian Community Network. Nice to meet all of you, and thank you Forefront for organizing. I guess we're starting to kind of, now that, you know, vaccination has become more readily available, and we're trying to kind of follow city and state guidelines about general reopening. And so we're starting to formulate a plan, and now it's just kind of the next step. So I actually selected the communication and implementation part. So we have an idea about how to, what type of plan or how we'd like things, but now it's the step of how do we communicate that to staff? Kind of what's the best way to go about doing that, and then obviously to address any concerns or questions that arise from that communication.
Are other folks in a similar place, different place?
Hi, this is Jim O'Connor with Advance Illinois. So we're, I think, maybe a little bit earlier than Maya's organization, where we're just in the stages of talking through what a work from home policy might look like, and if it's something we might even want to do. So I'd just be interested in how other organizations are thinking about that, and whether or not to allow it, what the policy would be for those days, and specifically how you're getting at the issue with having to meet up with people external to the organization on those days. So we have to meet a lot outside of our own internal team, and so if we were to set a date like a 1 day a week, it's likely that there'd be somebody, if not multiple people, who would still need to go in because there's so many other meetings happening. Just curious, is it how other organizations are meeting that challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely invite anyone. I know our team is dealing with the same thing. You know, my role particularly, I work with members, and we have hundreds of them across the entire state. So, yeah, the idea of like, oh, we'll all just be here at the same time, you know, once a week or once every 2 weeks, or whatever the timing might work out. It's a little complicated when you've got lots of external partners. I'll also share one of the things that Forefront did, and I also know anecdotally a number of other nonprofits have done, is to start with a survey of staff and sort of laying out some of the, like, these are the options that are on the table. What is your comfort level with these different options as a team? I think something we've tried to be conscious of, and I've heard from a lot of other organizations, is just that, you know, in addition to the trauma of the pandemic itself, the nonprofit sector, some articles report, I think I saw the number Forbes was reporting was 10% of nonprofit staff across the country was laid off. So there's a lot of anxiety amongst our nonprofit staff members here in Illinois and all across the country. So, you know, there's that really important piece of the human resource, human reality aspect of it too. So I know that the survey that we did, it was fairly brief, but it did have some things about the working context itself and some things just about what is your comfort level with these different options. Has anyone else done surveys or had experiences getting their plans started that might be helpful? Or anything that went wrong that you care to share? That can be really helpful as well.
Hi, I'll jump in. This is Joan Sherman from the Simmons Center for Global Chicago. We launched virtually, but we are in the process of considering opening a physical space. So we don't actually have a space yet, which will be staffed, but we joined the call today to just hear what people are thinking about in terms of protocols, because I feel like that's going to be an important offering that we will be expected to address for our future tenants. We have launched a survey to ask people about their comfort level of actually going back into a physical space so that we can be sure that we're responding to the level of interest. And people do seem to want to reconvene. I'm just not sure exactly what it will look like, but I don't really have a lot to contribute in terms of current practices because it's all still theoretical at this point. But
hi, this is Jill Misra. I'm in a similar situation as Joan. So I actually work as an independent consultant for myself. And so I worked from home even before the pandemic and would just go wherever clients needed me. I'm physically based in Chicago. So at this point, what I'm monitoring is what my clients need and what their plans are. And I'm seeing everything from organizations that have really, had to pivot. I do a lot of my work in the direct healthcare and social service space. So street outreach, federally qualified health centers, things of that nature that have been open in some capacity during all of this. The trend that I am seeing, and this is with both small and large organizations, is a definite openness to keeping administrative teams, your quote unquote back office functions, remote on an indefinite basis is what I'm seeing here locally. And for those that are looking to plan a return or to start layering some of their staff that weren't considered quote essential over the past year, but now they're ramping up operations again, the organizations that I'm working with are currently targeting September for those slowly looking to bring individuals back. The other reason that I'm here is I am also on the board for the Association of Consultants to Nonprofits, and we do not have a physical space. We've never had a physical space. Through our partnership with Forefront, we have, frequently utilized your space, but now, so we've seen this really interesting trend over the past year where our membership has just really started to grow, and primarily out of state members. So I'm kind of here with, one foot in the consulting world, one foot in the association leadership space, trying to figure out what are our options to support our members that coming in person is not an option. So, I think I'm very much here to learn and listen as well. So I don't have anything specific to share on hybrid other than I see organizations moving that way. I definitely think it should be centered in what organizational participants and staff are needing. And just anecdotally from people I know that work in the field, I think for organizations to be competitive going forward, some type of hybrid or remote or work from home has got to be in the mix.
Jill, thanks for that. And I think, all of us are definitely sort of in transition and will be for a while. It's been really interesting. One of the other hats that I wear on the Forefront team is working with Digital Giving and Giving Tuesday. And some of the partners I work with just 2 weeks ago were saying like, oh, we're definitely going to do all of our events virtually again this year. You know, we're 100% planning for that. And then this week I've gotten several calls that have said, okay, we're doing it live. We're going to be in person. So, you know, things are changing quickly. I'll also say, sort of from the forefront perspective and kind of some of the work we're doing just to share our process. So for those of you that maybe visited or attended programs before, we had a large conference space, and you either really had the option of being there, or occasionally we had webinars that you could sign into. What we're really looking to do moving forward is make sure that our new conference space and all of the programs that we host actually have both options. So our programs themselves will be hybrid. Again, to be very candid, we don't know exactly how that's going to work yet, or what platforms will best facilitate that. That's a work in progress. But our intention, because we've seen actually a really great increase in the connectivity of our community across the state, you know, folks being able to participate in programs that would have been, you know, you're not going to drive 6 hours each way for a 1 hour program, but you can hop on virtually. And so we really want to keep that actually moving forward. Yes, I also wanted to Tasha, to encourage you to feel free to throw anything in the chat. I'm trying to keep my eye on that one as well, so that folks can engage however you're able. So we've talked a little bit about hybrid work models, and one other thing I wanted to mention, and we haven't actually had to utilize this, but I know part of Forefront's process was creating a system we could implement of sort of A and B teams, so that if we get to the point, right now it's sort of optional to come into the office for our team. So our office manager is keeping track of who's interested in being in the space. So today, for example, we have a staff of 22-ish. Myself and our office manager, we're the only people on staff that are physically here in the office today. So we don't need to implement our A and B team plan. But the idea behind that is, if we get to a point that we're not ready yet to be at full capacity in terms of having everyone in the office, that we would have a schedule created where roughly half of the office would be coming in certain days and roughly half of the office would be coming in other days. And so that we could manage that capacity, but still be able to have folks in more frequently. As I said, that hasn't been something we have needed yet. I don't know if we will need it, but it's definitely an option for managing kind of how many people are physically in your space at any time. Has anyone tried an A/B option in their space? I'm gonna take that silence as a no, which is totally fine. Gotcha. Thanks, Jill. All right. So that, I think those are the key points I wanted to hit on hybrid models of interesting things I've heard from folks. Were there any other specific questions that anyone had about kind of the hybrid work models?
I just threw a couple in the chat. Susie, if you could take a look at those.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, Jim, that first question is really interesting to me, because that is not something that we have tried at our office, but since most folks have been virtual and still are most days, we have standing meetings for sort of folks that are responsible for kind of big picture strategy work. So that's probably the more of the vertical team meeting that you're talking about. And then horizontal team meetings, if I'm understanding you correctly, like folks that are, you know, like programming staff that are working across, those are still sort of scheduled just between the folks that need them. So they're as needed. And we haven't run into too many issues. The two platforms that we use are Zoom and Teams. We primarily use Teams internally. And the nice thing about that is there's not really any limit to capacity. Like we could have 6 different 2-person team meetings happening at the same time. Of course, Teams glitches more frequently than Zoom does, but these are the balances that we're working on. Anyone else have experiences with scheduling meetings with their virtual teams or hybrids that they want to share?
I also don't know the kind of cost structure associated with it, but one of the things that has helped a lot with scheduling meetings for us has been a site that's called Calendly, because that lets you kind of set up your own kind of calendar of availability. In the library, we've been using that with members so that they can select a time that works for them to schedule a one-on-one or a very small group meeting with myself or Zoe in the library to discuss any kind of research requests. So like you can create different kind of links of appointment availabilities, different kind of calendars associated with them. You can have a round robin where the whole team is in turns available for something. So like with us, either of us will handle a research appointment. So if we send a link to the library's research calendar, you can pick any time that is available and it will just choose whether it's myself or Zoe, who is the one who's going to be meeting with you, depending on which one of us is available at that time. So I don't know how well that fits in with a lot of what we're talking about here, but those sorts of scheduling tools are extremely useful. And I would recommend looking into that if that sounds like it's something that would be useful in your organization.
Well, thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
And then in terms of technologies, it sounds like you've got a new space at Forefront. Be interested in, Susie, you talking about kind of what you have planned or other organizations talking about. We have a screen on the wall, like a flat screen, and obviously everybody would have their laptop, but we're just thinking through those meetings that are mixed. They seem to be like, I can't imagine them going very well with given the current technology we have in our office. I'm just wondering if there's cameras or things that people are recommending so that when we are back and half the people are, some number are remote, some number are in person, what you recommend?
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's also still very much a work in progress for us. I can share one hypothetical that we've used so far is because we used to have a fair amount of conference calls that, we would have a certain number of our team in the room and then one or more partners outside of the room. And the idea so we have some new flat screens that have more reliable cameras than our old one is what I'll say. And the idea is basically to keep using Teams particularly for those internal meetings, but it doesn't really matter whether they're internal or external for this example. But so we in our new space have a conference room that's actually surprisingly similar to our old large conference room, so it can hold like 60 people comfortably. And then we have a couple of small conference rooms, one that's like a 4-person room and one that I think can hold 6 or 8 pretty comfortably. And those two spaces both have screens. So this would be more for meetings than for programs, but where we could have, so it's kind of the traditional, what we're seeing right now of all the bubbles on the screen would be up on the big screen, and then whoever's there in person is in person. I actually have the Dunham Foundation staff that I work with pretty frequently on programs. We have had meetings where they have been in their conference room with multiple staff members in the room, and then myself and sometimes another partner on their big screen, and it's actually worked pretty seamlessly. So at least from the virtual side of things, it shows up pretty much exactly like this experience right now, except one of my bubbles on my screen has a couple of people sitting at a table. So that's one thing, at least for internal meetings. When we're talking about external programs, that one that one is going to take a little bit longer to put together. Anyone else playing with ideas? Or, oh, yeah.
Say Jill in the chat.
Oh, yes.
Thank
you, Sarah.
Zoom also does let you do whiteboard functions. I know we've, in a couple of internal meetings, played around with it, but haven't really gotten it incorporated in meetings like this. But there is, under kind of sharing screen, a whiteboard feature that I would encourage people to try to mess around with like a small team meeting to see how that kind of feels for you, because it can be quite fun to try to do that as a sharing sort of exercise. But Jill also mentioned another site that sounded like was probably another option for replicating some of the physical sense of a meeting.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Sarah, for bringing that to my attention, and Jill for sharing that. That did remind me one thing, just talking about, again, sort of using that whiteboard space. One thing that I learned from a workshop I attended actually, and then used it a couple of times. So if you're just trying to sort of get feedback from folks that maybe don't have a good audio connection, we were able to create a PowerPoint slide that just had a grid of options, and people could use the annotate button to just put check marks or stars, or they could choose whatever mark they wanted to make. And then you could have them respond in that. So it's similar to the poll function here in Zoom, but it was able to kind of cross tab a couple of questions at the same time. Oh, Jamboard, yes, that is such a good one. I've seen that used in a couple of workshops as well. That actually reminds me, another thing I've seen is setting up just Google, a Google presentation, and having different folks have different pages that they're typing in their notes on. So it's that shared workspace, but you're also saving it, which is really nice. So that's something that I've seen used a couple of times. Tasha, thank you. That was very helpful. All right, and then Jim, I know you had a third question, so I'm going to scroll back. Anyone else feel free to jump.
Yeah, just curious about, assuming you know the vaccination status of those in your office and have a plan for masks within your office, maybe let's assume you've agreed that you're not going to have masks because everybody's vaccinated. We're a small team. What do you do about visitors in that environment? Would they be asked to mask? Just curious if others have thought through that.
I'm staying quiet for a moment to see if anybody else has experience they want to share, but I think this might be a good time to segue to sharing the slides that Fabric shared with us. But again, I'm going to pause for just a couple more seconds if anybody else wants to share visitor ideas. All right. Not hearing anything. Can folks see the Fabric Impact House slides? Okay, good deal. So there's a lot here, so I'll go through it just sort of quickly. Again, just sort of sharing this for the sole purpose of sharing the experience that we've been through, and I will also say this is fairly dated. Sarah, help me out if I'm remembering incorrectly, but I think they shared this with us in January or February. So a lot has changed since then. But again, just sharing it for the purpose of this is the process that we have been through, this part in conjunction with our physical space. So again, I'm not seeing the chat while I'm sharing my screen. So if anyone wants to stop me, please jump on the mic and say something, or Sarah flag me. All right, so let's just sort of roll through these. Probably don't need to read this word for word, but the sort of guiding principle that they were really going with this was communicate and over communicate, and also just acknowledging the fact that there's a lot that's out of our control, both as an organization and as individuals. You know, we can control what we each do for ourselves, but not so much others in many cases. So trying to kind of balance all of those concepts at the same time, and that putting trust in one another to take care of ourselves and take care of each other. So they started with kind of this overview of the plan. I think, again, at that point, we were still in phase 2. So it was a million years ago by experience standards. But again, setting that sort of place setting and making sure, because there's some folks that are a little bit obsessed with reading these. I think there was a while there that I was reading the updates every single day, but not everybody does. So you want to make sure that the whole team knows we kind of start from big and working down small. So what are the CDC guidelines? What are the state guidelines? And then whatever the local plan is. Of course, our main office is here in Chicago. So again, talking about the levels of engagement. This one I thought was particularly interesting to actually have a whole slide that was just dedicated to this idea of there's the property management team, the staff in our space, our organization, because Fabric House is actually a collaboration of a number of independent organizations, and then the individual people in that space. So again, just talking about how each of us plays into that role. I think it goes back to me for, you know, just setting expectations and kind of getting that baseline for everyone to start from. So again, lots of basic, just reaffirming basic things. This is still here today. So when I stepped into the elevator today, there were nice friendly decals that said, please stand in the corner and maintain space from one another. There is a single direction. So we have a big, open, beautiful lobby, which used to just have folks kind of walking all over the place. Now there is a single direction entrance and exit. So you can enter from Madison Street and exit on, what is that, Wells, I think. But everyone is moving in the same direction. So again, it kind of helps manage how many different folks are crossing paths at any given time. So there's our fun diagram of how folks move through. Basic concepts of how they're getting their work done. And so this one, again, I thought was really great for just setting the expectations of, you know, this is everything in the space that is there to protect you. These are the things that we have done. Extra cleaning. So our kitchens are thankfully now open again, but for a while they were not. So there was no shared space there. The water fountains are still off, but there is drinkable water, of course, available. Let's see, there are still physical markers on the floor that encourage folks to keep 6-foot distance. I have not heard that that's going to change in the near future, but they're still here currently. So again, lots of transparency and lots of communication. I think, like many things, erring on the side of over communication helps folks feel as safe as possible. So we still currently have the mask mandate. As I mentioned in the beginning, I don't have a mask on right now because I'm in a closed room with the doors closed. But whenever we're in any shared space, we are still wearing masks right now. And that is, again, mostly because there are actually a number of organizations sharing 2 floors here.
Just a question, Susie, how long are you planning to keep that mandate?
Yeah, I haven't heard. So I guess that's as much as I can say. I don't know. Sorry,
Yeah.
that's not very helpful.
That's okay. Thanks.
All right. Oh, this is another thing that was a little bit amusing, just in terms of the process of coming back to the office. So when today I signed up with my office manager saying, I'm going to come into the office, you know, do I need to, what are the procedures? And they sent me this handy little QR code. And so I came in and I went to the security desk on the first floor. And they said, oh, we're not using that system anymore. Do you just have your badge? I was like, this is my first time here. I don't have a badge yet. So eventually, obviously, I got into the building, but they are taking these limited guests and limited engagements very seriously, which I appreciate. So that's something that's very much still in place. If you want to be in the space currently, you have to register in advance for any of the floors in this building. Adjusting staffing schedules, that's what I mentioned earlier about having kind of A and B teams. Again, we haven't actually had to use that because since it has been optional for our staff to come in so far, we've had a really low in-person attendance so far. And in terms of their own cleaning supplies, so this was something they were still really stressing when, I mean, in January and February, the caseload was enormous. At the moment, since most of us are not here, we don't have, so I did not bring extra cleaning supplies with me today. I think that is one thing that has been dropped. But I know they are continuing the higher cleaning than they typically would have before the pandemic in the spaces. Okay, again, back to those sort of personal best practices, setting those expectations. We're still wearing masks. There's hand sanitation at the entrance to the building and to our floor as well. And they're also in all of the common spaces on all of the tables are also hand sanitizing bottles. Oh, yeah. So I really enjoyed this video when they put it out of this is how to pass a file while maintaining social distance. I hope that that's not relevant for much longer. Let's see. Not sure what's on that page. Yep. So again, just sharing, encouraging folks to wash their hands frequently. I will say that was not something that was super stressed when I came in today, but again, the hand sanitizer was available at the entrances. So I think these next few slides are all sort of super helpful videos. I giggle a little bit because they just kind of make me laugh, but at the same time, I do think erring on the side of over communicating is definitely the direction I would encourage folks to go. All right, this one is seeming to not load, so I'm going to go ahead and keep clicking through. I mentioned the shared kitchen spaces are actually reopened now. Reminding folks to be attentive to their own needs and others. It looks like there's something in the chat, but I can't see it.
Jill was mentioning that she appreciates
That's the end of our slideshow.
And the idea that you should plan for things to not go as planned and have some flexibility built in.
Yes, absolutely.
I will mention for the earlier question
All
of
right.
when things will change, that we receive newsletters basically monthly from Fabric. So we would probably expect to see the next update on how things are progressing at the beginning of June. So if they're going to be changing anything in the near future, we'll probably find out on a kind of month by month basis.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. All right. So again, I hope that was helpful to folks. Again, sharing just for transparency, definitely not saying like that is the be all end all of safety planning. But it was the process that we went through, and I'm still breathing. All right. Anything else about creating work plans? I know we haven't really talked about vaccination status much. So I definitely want to make sure we have plenty of time for that topic. And if there were others that people wanted to dive into. But anything else about creating working from work plans or sharing working from work plans questions? Again, things that worked, things that didn't work. Open the floor.
Hi, this is Joan Sherman again. I think one of the things that Jim mentioned that I think a lot of us are going to be encountering is how to accommodate the different people participating from different places and the technology. So I think as we learn about new technologies, as you've shared, like screens that work, microphones that work, one of the things that a lot of people have requested from us is smaller conference rooms so that a team of 4 or 6 can work together, but also have a screen where other people participate in the meeting, similar to what you were describing earlier. And it sounds like a lot of the systems that exist are kind of make shift, make do, see if it works. But it would be great if there was some, I don't know, research or some kind of best practice about what actually are some of the better tools to use in those processes, because I think that's going to be a norm for a lot of us going forward.
Yeah, Joan, thank you so much for that. That actually made me think. So we have had a COVID resource page for quite some time that was originally dedicated to, what's currently going on, what were the funding opportunities that were available. Most of those unfortunately have closed at this point. But we've been talking about kind of what that page needs to morph into as we're going through this process of hopefully recovering. Starting the recovery and keep on going. We know it's going to take a little while. And I wonder if, I'm just sort of thinking out loud right now, there might be, and Sarah, I know you're really good with collecting and sharing data ideas. So I'm going to ping you to help me think through this. But if we could put something on the resource page, maybe not as simple as a Google Doc, but not as complicated as a LibGuide, but somewhere in there that collects some of that information so that folks can just kind of refer to it and add to it, making a note that is something that we can do, or hopefully we can do.
Yeah, some of that frequently
And
depends
then
on your organization and kind of its size and its needs. Like I'll toss a link in the chat that is looking at 16 different tools for online meetings and video conferences. And so those range price-wise from free to, fairly expensive monthly fees, because it can depend a little bit on what tools you want, what kind of size your organization is, lots of things like that. For some people, if you have a very small team, if you're just doing like one-on-one things, Zoom free accounts work just fine for one-on-one sorts of meetings for lengthy periods of time. If you're already using Microsoft Office Suite for a number of things, having Teams available is a kind of built-in option that might work quite well for your team. So a lot of it really kind of just depends on what the needs are for your organization. But yeah, I know the library's kind of supplemental guide to our resource page had some tech things on there, but it should definitely be refreshed. So that is an excellent idea for moving that one forward. Yeah, Tasha mentioned that her office has
We can circle back to that.
staggered work schedules as well, which seems to be a pretty popular option to make sure you're not having too many people in one place at one time.
Sarah, I don't know if it was just me, but I think I cut out for the beginning of that. What was the program?
I was just saying that Tasha had mentioned in the chat that her organization is looking at potentially staggered sorts of schedules, which seem to be a pretty popular option to keep there from being too many people together at one time. Yeah, I've had a delay and occasionally when you've been talking too, so I think our computers aren't playing nice right now.
All right, well, hopefully we'll be able to hang on for a few more minutes here. I wanted to circle back to vaccination status and, talking about visitors. Are there any organizations, individuals, policies you've heard of folks that are dealing with that? I was chatting with actually somebody from the Chronicle of Philanthropy this morning who's trying to kind of gather a national picture of what standards are bubbling up. And the question they asked me was, do you think all of your nonprofit members will be requiring vaccinations? And I was really surprised that they phrased it that way. I said, that was not one of the survey questions that we asked our members, but anecdotally from the conversations I've had, most people, most nonprofit leaders that I've talked to recently have been leaning more towards not requiring vaccinations, but trying to find ways to share vaccination status so that folks who are not able to, I actually have a friend that has a really bad egg allergy and can't get a vaccine, or was recommended not to. And so letting folks like that who for whatever reason may not be able to get vaccinated or have some other risk factors so that they know what precautions are in place to keep them safe if they want to participate in person. So that's just sort of one anecdote that I've heard of, trying to decide whether you're requiring vaccinations or requiring folks to share their status so that you can help share what the risk factor is to folks that are participating. Has anyone started to look at those types of policies or have anything in place or thoughts about what might be?
This is Jill. One of the things that I've seen with my client organizations here in Chicago is many leaders having a preference for employees to be vaccinated, but I've yet to see any of them say that they are requiring it. And because of the increased awareness and effort that many of our social service and quite frankly, every organization has looked at from an equity and inclusivity lens over the past year, while we recognize that vaccination status is not the same as what we would think of as racial and ethnic diversity, equity, and inclusion, that if you broaden that lens and framework, that there are some considerations that fall within that kind of a mindset to make sure that you are able to support employees regardless of vaccination status. So that's not an easy conversation. I don't have any silver bullet answers there, but I am seeing those conversations happen as leaders want to be very mindful of the really personal nature of this choice, and also ensure that there's not stigma that creates issues in the workplace or dissension among employees based upon one status or another.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so important. And I've heard that echoed in conversations I've been a part of as well.
Part of the conversation currently is that the vaccines are currently approved under an emergency authorization from the FDA instead of the full authorization. So many organizations are hesitant to make any sort of mandate while it is under a type of approval that has not generally been used frequently in the past. There may be more of a move toward a little more certainty if/when vaccines have accrued enough data to get the full approval of the FDA. So that will probably change a number of things as well. But the use of emergency authorization has many people feeling that too many questions are raised to try to mandate things.
Yeah. So if I'm following my own notes correctly, we have worked our way through our dynamic agenda. We had scheduled this time to hold this space until 2:30. Again, we really want to make sure that we're holding this for folks to ask questions, share what's worked, share your concerns, work through it together. I wish that I had been able to come and say, I have all of the answers and we have fixed it. But I would be so much richer and living in some sort of island somewhere if I had those answers. So I hope that today has still been useful to everyone, just in terms of sharing the information that we do have, working through the process together. And again, just knowing that you are not alone in this process. We're all working through it. I will commit to looking at what we can continue to collect and make available on our resources page. And so we'll try to, I've got obviously everyone's email address that's here today. And if we do have some new tools, we'll be sure to share those out in the newsletter as they come available. But I did want to, again, say if there are any other topics that you were hoping to talk about today that we haven't touched on, any general shares or concerns or questions that folks want to bring up, this space is your space.
This is Jill again. I don't want to be talkative, but I don't see anyone else unmuting. This is just a general question, not having to do with physical space, but again, as we think about organizations like Forefront, like Association of Consultants to Nonprofits that offer a good amount of our programming through webinars or what previously would have been in person. I know one of the conversations we've been trying to figure out is to charge or not to charge. And we actually are starting to move in that direction for both members and non-members. And I saw that you are doing the same for some of your programs as well. So I think that'll be another trend to kind of follow as we, move into this next phase of whether it's remote, hybrid, or, I think the online platforms in some capacity are here to stay. And on the organizational side, we have to figure out not only the operational piece of that, but how does that fit into our business models? Right? It's not how we budgeted for the year, but as we come up on opportunity to kind of plan in a new and different way, thinking about, how can we get creative with this? So I think that's just another interesting thing to follow on the programming side is like, how do attendance metrics then trend once we begin to charge for content, also recognizing there's a balance, of course, with, Zoom fatigue.
Absolutely. I think that is a really great point. And it makes me think of actually something that is COVID related and also equity related, something we've been very vaguely toying with before the pandemic, but has now become a real part of our conversation is a pay what you can model. It's something that I've been really interested in quite a while, since I think the first time I heard of it, was, oh shoot, I'm gonna forget the name of the bakery now, but it was a cafe bakery that did a CARES model where folks could just pay whatever they wanted for a meal with no suggestions, and it had varying results and success. But there've been of other organizations, small and large, that have done kind of experiments with pay what you can, or sometimes it's called pay what you want. Everlane, a clothing brand, they've done a few pay what you want models, but the idea is that you have options that folks can self-select for whether they are sort of a standard attendee, if they're someone that needs access but has either a hardship or some other accessibility issue. Sometimes those tickets are called hardship tickets, sometimes they're called community tickets. I think there's lots of ideas around best practices in that sense. And then there's often on the other end of things a kind of friends of the family or supporter ticket. And that is someone who says, like, I am a person of means or an organization of means. And so not only am I going to pay the basic rate, but I'm going to pay a little bit extra knowing that I'm supporting other members of the community. And so we're actually testing this out for the first time with a program that we're hosting next week. And I'm really, we at Forefront also have a membership option and a public option. And again, it's totally trusting adults to be adults and choose the ticket that fits best for them. But so far I've been really folks selecting at all of the ticket levels, and from the data that we do have, what appears to be the right level for them. So as we're thinking, again, about so many things are changing, it's a ripe opportunity to do things differently than we did before. So I'd be happy to share some of the, if anyone is interested, the research that we've done, but I think it's also a really nice time in the nonprofit community specifically, when you have payment models, to be able to offer this and say, we want everyone to participate in whatever capacity you can. We do have a bottom line as an organization, and therefore these are the options that we are able to make available to you. Please select what makes sense. So again, I'd be super happy to share the research that I've done, but I think both from a COVID standpoint and from an equity and access standpoint, it's a really interesting model to provide access to folks that we maybe haven't in the past.
That's excellent. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Oh, Wahlberg Brothers restaurant. Thank you. Right. Any other questions, topics we haven't brought up? All right. Well, again, I hope today was helpful to all of you. Please feel free, let me put my email address in the chat just in case you don't have. Sarah, anything I'm forgetting?
No, I think you are good.
Well, thank you for taking the time to join us. I know we're all zoomed out. I hope today was helpful, and I hope afternoon.